Good evening. On behalf of Asia Society Hong Kong Center, it's a great pleasure to welcome all of you here at the Jockey Club Hall for this wonderful program. This is some of you were here earlier. This is our second program at the hall. Earlier, we had the great honor of hosting Robert Thompson of News Corp and Wall Street Journal, and so it's a great delight that right now we can talk about developing global minds for Hong Kong's future at Jockey Club Hall. And it really is a great pleasure for me as the executive director to welcome all of you here. And especially, I'm especially grateful that two of our trustees are here on the panel, Eric Lee and Ming Lau, to be part of the panel. And a good friend, thank you, Alessandro Reyes, Professor Reyes, thank you for hosting, for moderating this program. And of course, I want to acknowledge Kuby Chen, principal of Munsang College, and Daniel Obst, President and CEO of AFS, for being here. And this is a program that I want to show you how it came about. And I want to acknowledge Didi. Didi, where are you? Didi is currently chair of, please stand up, Didi. Didi is currently the chair of AFS here in Hong Kong, but Didi is a longtime friend and colleague. I first met Didi as a member of Asia Society in the early 90s when she was a deputy director of Asia Society Hong Kong. So this is how far we've gone back. And so it's a full circle to come back to this, to here at Asia Society Hong Kong Center, to have this wonderful facility to host a program like this. Those of you who know Asia Society know that we're an educational institution. We have three prongs, three pillars. Arts and culture, business and policy, and education really is the foundation of this organization. And currently, we've been in this center now for 5 years, but we've been around since 1990. The original mission of, still the mission of Asia Society, we were founded in 1990 by people like Dr. Sir Q.W. Lee, formerly of Hang Seng Pang, and William Purvis. We were founded in the aftermath of 1989, Tiananmen, was to make sure Hong Kong continued to be a global center. Global has always been part of our DNA. So for us tonight to host this program about developing global mindset for Hong Kong's future is very important to us. It's not just Hong Kong, but I think today when we have Robert Thompson talking about fake news, increasingly around the world, we've been looking inward. That really bothers me, and I'm sure some of you too. And there's a wonderful exhibition right now at our Chantal Miller Gallery talking about breathing space. There's one particular artwork that I want to draw you to. This particular artwork is bricks by a Hong Kong artist. Hong Kong bricking, some of the vision of bricking yourself in. We're forgetting the vision of the globalness. The flip side of looking inward is that we forget about the outside world. And I think in this really interesting time, we need to look outward. Whether we're in the United States or whether we're in Europe or where we're in Asia. I, as a Chinese American, as an immigrant, I immigrated to the States with my family as a young child in the 70s. For me, globalness has been really a godsend, looking outward. And I think this is one of the reasons Asia Society Hong Kong is really, really, this is one of the reasons I said yes when I came back to Hong Kong 5 years ago, looking outward, continue to look outward, whether as a Chinese American or as a Hong Kong youth. And this is one of the reasons we're having this discussion. And one of the reasons I became a volunteer in the 90s for AFS as a volunteer, and my student was from Finland. My job was to be her mentor, to make sure that she acclimatized to Hong Kong. I took that same vision when I went back to New York, where I worked for 9 years. I became a volunteer for Big Brother and Big Sister. My little sister lived in Harlem, but her family, her mother was born in Shenzhen. And my experience with Juliana as Big Brother, Big Sister volunteer, along with the AFS volunteer, made me realize the importance of looking outward. Opportunities is really important for us to look outward and this is one of the reasons, I don't know if you saw, some of you have seen our Anthony Gormley sculpture up there that we put up, looking outward. And that's really the fundamental, the basis of Asia Society Hong Kong Center. And I want to thank all of you for being here, and I want to turn it over to Seth Peterson, Chair of the Board of AFS Hong Kong, to continue the next phase and then formally introduce our speaker. Seth?
Good evening. Good evening, and on behalf of the Board of AFS Hong Kong, welcome, and thanks for coming. I particularly wish to thank Alice and Asia Society for hosting this event, and our distinguished moderator and panelists for taking part, especially Daniel Obst, the president of AFS International. AFS Hong Kong is proud to be part of an event on such an important topic, developing global mindsets for Hong Kong's future, a complex and potentially controversial subject. Globalization presents opportunities and challenges and may not be desired by all or benefiting all, but it seems our digital and physical connectedness is ever increasing, inevitable, and irreversible. Therefore, how we develop global mindsets, starting with young people, to promote harmony, understanding, and competitiveness is critical to our collective futures. Since its founding, AFS has promoted intercultural learning and understanding through student exchanges. A personal anecdote. 31 years ago, I went from Lincoln, Nebraska to Melbourne, Australia to live with a family for a year as an AFS exchange student. This was my first international experience, but it influenced my future studies and career choices, including the decision to study Chinese. I've now spent virtually my entire 25-year career based in Greater China and visit my host family in Melbourne frequently. This year marks 35 years for AFS in Hong Kong, and in this time we've hosted more than 4,000 students from over 20 countries, 120 out this year alone and 50 in. For this, we must thank the staff of AFS Hong Kong, our volunteers, alumni, corporate sponsors, and donors in the community, as well as our partners throughout the network for their continued support. Here tonight, we have 40 directors in the audience representing AFS in their various countries. They're in town this week for an executive development seminar on creative leadership hosted by AFS Hong Kong. We all look forward to an engaging and enlightening discussion. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Alejandro Reyes. I am a visiting associate professor in the Politics and Public Administration Department of the University of Hong Kong. I was born in the Philippines. I studied in the United States for 10 years, and then I went to study in the UK for almost 3 years, and then I went to work in Canada, and then went to work in Hong Kong, worked in Singapore, and I'm a Canadian citizen, so there we go, and a permanent Hong Kong resident. So I like to think of myself as a kind of example, sort of the globalist, the person and a global citizen. So anyway, it's my pleasure to moderate this session and on developing global mindsets for Hong Kong's future. And I just want to first thank the Asia Society and AFS and recognize also that this is the first in the series of Asia Society's global education program. So I think we will have more such discussions in the future. And I would also like to welcome all the AFS directors coming from overseas. So thank you for being here. I just very quickly, the biographies of our panel are in the handout, but I just very quickly introduce them. To my right is Kuby Chan, principal of Munsang College and a veteran educator in Hong Kong. To her right is Lau Ming Wai, the chairman of the Youth Commission and a businessman here in Hong Kong. Then to his right is Eric Lee, a venture capitalist and founder and managing partner of Chengwei Capital, and I guess a public intellectual, can I say that? Then to his right is Daniel Obst, the president and CEO of AFS. So this is a very important topic, right? And I just want to alert you that we want to get your input and your comments as much as possible. So if you could please think of questions that you would like to ask. We'll go out and have you ask them. My only request is that if you want to comment or ask a question, please introduce yourself and your affiliation, and also keep to the point and be brief, because I will cut you off if it's too long, right? Okay. Education, I go to many, many business conferences every year, and there is always a time when someone will stand up and say, it's all about education, right? And we know it's all about education because that's really, in many ways, the silver bullet. It can deal with poverty, with inequality, with social mobility, and environmental and sustainability challenges, with health issues, with technological change, with social dysfunction, with crime. So what we want to do here, focus on this idea of a global mindset, what it is, and think about solutions as well. Because it's not enough, I think, nowadays to just say, oh, we need a global mindset. Everybody says we need a global mindset. But what does that mean, right? And so I would say, when I was thinking about this topic, right, it's not enough that you're somebody with international exposure or you've traveled abroad. It's not enough that you know a nice cafe in New York, or you know the difference between Steve Mnuchin and Yehudi Menuhin, right? That you have that kind of broad knowledge. But it's about thinking, right? It's about how you think, what your mindset is. When I was developing a leadership program at Hong Kong U for international business and global management students, I borrowed from a framework devised by two Brendas, Brenda Dwyer and Brenda Bushell, who are educators, I think one of them in the region. And they came up with 5 aspects of what a global mindset is. One, perspective, that you understand that other people have legitimate perspectives, that there's not one universally shared perspective, and other people have a different perspective from yourself. The second one is awareness of planetary health, and that means sustainability in its broadest definitions. So not just about the environment, but also about things like gender parity and water sustainability, and that humans also share this planet with other species, as well as with each other. Third aspect, systems, that you have to think about the interconnections in the world, the interdependencies in this globalized world. How are things connected, and understand and think systemically. Right? And fourth, there's an aspect of involvement that as Jackie Robinson said, life is not a spectator sport, right? That you have to participate. And there are also consequences for not participating, right? So what is that sort of involvement consciousness? The fifth is process, that learning and knowledge creation are something that is constant, but also cooperative. That nowadays knowledge and learning involves a lot of collaboration and are lifelong endeavors. I would add a 6th, which would be technology awareness, but we can include that maybe in the process. This idea that technology is changing everything we do, from how we're born to how we die, right? So, Kuby, I'll go to you first, right? So let me ask you, what is this global mindset from your perspective as a Hong Kong educator? And what indeed is the challenge that Hong Kong faces in terms of developing this global mindset for Hong Kong's future?
It seems that I am a student being picked up by the teacher. It's good that I am the first one, lady first. Yeah. I'm just afraid that after you all, I won't have anything to say, and so it's good to be the first one. Now, just now, Professor gave us a very sophisticated definition of global mindset. I can't remember all, be honest. Yeah, it's very sophisticated definition. Yeah, no test. And now, here I would like to share with you how I will communicate global mindset to my students. I am a secondary school principal. My student aged from 12 years old to 18 years old. They are teenagers from 13 to 19, but for mine, 12 to 18. For me, a global mindset is not just about how much we know. Just as the professor said, it has something to do with how we think and how we approach different issues. It has less to do with how many countries we have visited, yes. Even though we have been to many countries, it doesn't mean that we have global mindset. It has more to do with our attitude towards cultural diversity between countries. And so I think people now, they are more bounded by mental boundary than physical boundary. In fact, attitude is very important. But attitude itself is not something inborn. There are many factors affecting the attitude of the youth, including knowledge acquired, whether they have training or their upbringing, the family. And so, back to the question, I think it is really important for the youth to have a global mindset. In fact, global mindset not just confined to the youth. Everybody, every one of us need global mindset because we are not living in isolation. We are all connected, interdependence. And so there are different reasons why we have to cultivate global mindset. The first one, I think we are lucky. We are blessed with advanced technology and greater access to information technology. And so whether we are in the perception of a global mindset is not just a choice. It is not a choice. It is a must. It is a must. We must know what are happening in the other parts of the world, what are the possible impact on us. Just as if you are considering whether to buy a flat, you have to really think about the interest rate. If the interest rate is going to rise, then will you still invest on the property? Some of you may, the rich one, I think. Not for me, not for me. Yeah, and so I think it is a must. However, there's a big question for me. Among the students, can they really realize the significance of having a global mindset? They realize it or not, that is their attitude. And so we have to really pay attention to their attitude. And the second reason, I think Professor mentioned something about whether we understand others, whether we have knowledge of the others is very important because it can enhance our adaptability and also flexibility. Every one of us want to live a happy life. If you want to be happy, then you're going to have more understanding of the others. More understanding will nurture you, respect for diversity, and also I think empathy, being empathetic to others, then you can live more happily. We need to live with each other in harmony. And lastly, give me some more time, okay? Now, in Hong Kong in particular, we have our unique historical background. We are now an international commercial and financial center. Whether our youth are having a global mindset is a matter of urgency. Many other cities in our neighboring countries, in fact, they are catching up, or I should say, they are ahead of us, already ahead of us. If our youth do not have global mindset, are not ready to see things from a wider perspective, I don't think they can sharpen, not to mention whether they can maintain the competitiveness. And so I think having global mindset means sharpening or shaping of their attitude. And for me, we have the responsibility to tell our youngsters, you need a global mindset.
Kuby, when we discussed before this session, you specifically said it's a matter of urgency in Hong Kong. Why is it so urgent? I mean, what is going wrong? What do you see in your school or in other schools that makes you think that it's such an urgent need?
Now, for the, I cannot say the majority, but quite a number of our teenagers they are kind of self-centered. They only concern about themselves. They have the ideology of Hong Kong first. They are not willing to open up their minds, not even to China. China is our mother country. And they are not capable of accommodating diversity, no matter cultural diversity or political diversity. Maybe in this venue we are not going political, but anyway, if they just confine themselves to their own territory, Hong Kong, then how can they see the opportunities? If they are willing to open up their mind, they can see the hidden opportunities. There are opportunities everywhere. If they just confine themselves, they will die. I'm afraid that one day, Hong Kong, what will Hong Kong become?
Yes, thank you. Now, if I can turn to you, Ming, I'm wondering if you can deepen our understanding of what's going on in Hong Kong. You're very engaged as chairman of the Youth Commission in Young People's Affairs, and especially with a new administration coming in. And I note that our next chief executive, Carrie Lam, she already has spoken after her election about the need for a global mindset and for civic mindedness. So what are your thoughts?
I really like your rather comprehensive definition of global mindset, but I'm going to focus on the main area where I think there is urgency to inoculate into Hong Kong's young people. And it's what I would call cultural EQ or cultural fluency. It's the ability to interact with people from other cultures or backgrounds, not necessarily knowing them inside out, but at least have the basic skill set or attributes to interact with them in a healthy and productive manner. The key stumbling block I see in Hong Kong to achieving that, and it's something Kuby should be concerned with as well, is the declining level of English. The declining standard of English in Hong Kong, I think, is going to be the major obstacle to developing the global mindset or the cultural EQ I'm talking about, because in most cases, unless you interact with someone from an English-speaking country, your lingua franca is probably English. You're going to probably be speaking English to a Frenchman or a Spaniard or a Russian. The level of comfort of using English that I see in a lot of young people is declining at best, or actually not functional. They can speak, they can write, but only at a survival level, I would say. That I see is the main stumbling block to actually developing this, because without English, without a confident, a comfortable command of English, the rest of the world is somewhat inaccessible or much harder to access. With a decent command of English, with a confident command of English, pretty much everything else is open to you. The other one I want to add, Kuby focused on the localism, the Hong Kong first. That I think in some cases it's true. In some cases it's true. I would sort of reduce it to an even a more basic level on how to develop this cultural mindset. It's curiosity. It's curiosity. It's about the desire to discover something that's not in front of you, to discover something that you probably don't need to discover right away. It's curiosity. Curiosity to find out what else is going on, what else is out there. That to me is lacking. You mentioned the chief executive-elect, future government. This current government, as well as the next one, from present policies and election manifestos, they're going to throw more resources in organizing cultural exchanges, in organizing activities and programs that promote, I think, a higher level of awareness with the world, whether it's face-to-face interaction, whether it's tours or exchanges. More of that is coming, but it's never enough. And I dare say we're actually preaching to the choir, to the converted here. I'm willing to bet that everyone in this room has lived, worked, or studied abroad. I think the 99% of people in this room have. So in some sense, we're analyzing people who are different from us. And in terms of devising solutions, how we can help these young people who may be less globally minded, we may not be the best person. We have the luxury, we have the privilege of having this, but we might not be the best, we might not be in the best perspective to prescribe the medicine, to prescribe whatever solution. I just want everyone to bear that in mind.
Yes. Now, you mentioned curiosity. So whenever I hear the word curiosity, I think about, curiosity kills the cat, right? So one of the things that allows people to be curious without fear of being killed, like the cat, is that we must eliminate that fear of failure, which is, of course, something that is very difficult in certain cultures. And now, as a businessman, how do you think we can sort of get our young people to overcome this kind of fear of failure?
On that, I think for those of us who read Western media, English media, I think we've all heard of the term snowflakes. Weak, fragile, normally young people who can't take the heat. Is that a recent phenomenon, or is this something invented? I don't know. What I dare say, and just from anecdotes, the opportunities or the chances to experience failure and setbacks, the opportunities to experience setbacks and failures in a safe manner in the Hong Kong education environment is reducing. You have so-called monster parents or helicopter parents constantly protecting students and young people to the detriment of educators and teachers. And in that sense, like say, the opportunity to experience minor setbacks, minor failures is reduced. And that, I think, is actually counterproductive to building confidence, building character.
Tiger Mom was my classmate. You can ask me about her later. But anyway, I'm wondering if we can move then to Eric. You have a lot of experience on the mainland with education. You started international schools, and also you've done some research at Stanford on China, US, and Russia, I believe, on critical thinking. I want to give your perspective from that experience, and also some thoughts from the studies that have been done, that you've been involved in.
Okay, so first I think the so-called globalists are in trouble. We should probably face that.
My life is over.
A globalist is somebody who picks up his Starbucks coffee and goes to wherever he is in the world, and he travels. He picks up a Starbucks coffee and goes to an IFC building or something like that. Oops. And then talks about finance and eats sushi for lunch, and talk about American politics in the afternoon, and goes to a black tie charity bar at night. And they may have different skin colors, but they all speak the same. They all speak the lingua franca of the world, English, and they're in trouble. They're finished. They're finished because the globalists have completely turned their lives into abstractions that are completely disconnected from their own roots. A globalist who lives in Bangladesh has more in common with someone who lives in Silicon Valley than his neighbors. He doesn't know his names. Okay, and that's where globalists have come to in our time. And so I think if we train our children to be that, we're a little late because they've missed the train. That train had been going for 20 years and it's over. The world is not going in that direction. So I think that's right. We need to look outward, as Alice said, but in a fundamentally different way. Without inward, there's no outward. Without community, there's no world. Without the self, there are no others. So I think, first, I think globalists are in trouble, and we need to really fundamentally rethink what global outlook means. And second, I think if you want to go outward, the key question is not how great it is out there. If you want to have a meaningful outward outlook in life, you got to know what you have to offer to the world. You have to have some. Why do people want you? You have to have something to offer to the world. And a globalist has nothing to offer to the world because he's too abstract. I remember I was a high school student in Shanghai many years ago. We were opening up to the world in the 80s. And every time there's an American comes to the school to talk, whatever, we were enamored by him or her and these people. Not because they were globalists, but because they were Americans. Because America was so interesting to us. We wanted to know everything about America. And then later in life, I found that happening to me. As I went out to the world, and it's still happening to this day, everybody wanted to talk to me because everybody wanted to know what's going on in China. Because China was so interesting to the world. I mean, I go to America, I go to Europe, I go to Africa. Everybody wanted to talk to me, not because I'm a globalist or I'm so brilliant, because I'm Chinese. And I see mainland Chinese. I have one thing is trouble. I'm not sure why, because in the last 10 years, mainland Chinese students studying abroad have been going up dramatically from sort of 5 digits to 6 digits, and I think it was 500,000 people last year, just in 1 year. And actually, the number in Hong Kong has been declining. I don't know why, but and everywhere they go, even they speak horrible English, people surround them and want to talk to them. Not because they're globalists, but because they're Chinese. And they're getting, and they come back and they bring the world to China. So I guess my question is, how does that apply to Hong Kong? Hong Kong was a very unique place for a long time, and we were enamored by Hong Kong when I was growing up. It seemed so interesting, so different from us, and so different from other parts of the world. But if you ask me what's Hong Kong today, I don't have an answer. So I think the first thing to be a globalist is you got to know who you are. Otherwise, you have nothing to offer to the world, and you won't be a successful globalist. If you don't know who you are, you don't have much to offer to the world. I think that's the question that Hong Kong should ask itself. Who are we?
Eric, can you tell us also, I suddenly feel very uneasy. And if you go to my Twitter account, AReyesHK, the first word there is globalist. So in my profile, so I'm suddenly feeling very uneasy. My future is over, wow. All right. Eric, I wonder if you could talk about the research that you've done on critical thinking, I believe, in China, Russia, and the US.
Yep, yeah. So I have 2 children in the public school system in Shanghai. And when they started a few years ago, I read the newspaper like everybody else. And I'm told a story that the Chinese public school is about rote learning. And the more you learn, the stupider you get. Okay. So obviously, I'm worried. I got 2 of them. Yet, I'm a venture capitalist. I've been a venture capitalist in China for 20 years. And I back amazing entrepreneurs that come from Chinese school, public school education. Incredibly innovative, incredibly creative, tough as hell, great competitors. Never been outside China, but knows everything about the world. So I don't know what's going on. I really need to study this. And of course, so I went to my alma mater, Stanford. I went to the School of Education. I said, let's study this. I like to find out what's going on. So we decided we're going to study high school students. We're going to do two. One is high school, and then we test them again in college, third year, junior year in college, yeah? And we pick 3 countries, China, Russia, and America. And we compare, we control the study, so they all come from similar socioeconomic backgrounds. So if we take Zhengzhou, we compare that with Pittsburgh, okay? The study has been running for 4 or 5 years, and we have thousands and thousands of samples. We examine 2 groups. One is the graduating high school class, and then end of junior year, third year in college, yeah? And we examine 2 things, learning habits and critical thinking. And critical thinking here has a very technical definition, which is it's not about criticizing. It's about how to set up assumptions, how to extrapolate, yeah? So, and which I think is very essential to be a successful globalist. You gotta have critical thinking abilities. So the results surprised me. In graduating high school class, of course, the Chinese came on top. That wasn't a surprise because we beat, we beat it into them like I do to my kids. So the Chinese are about number 1, and Russia 2nd, and America 3rd. And the Chinese are about 2 standard deviations above the Americans, which just means the Chinese are 4 years ahead of the Americans in learning habits, okay? What surprised me was critical thinking. The Chinese came on top. And the Chinese came on top as 2.5 standard deviations above the Americans. That means they were almost 4 years ahead of the Americans graduating high school class in critical thinking, okay? And the Russians are in the middle. And we reworked the data again and again and again and came up with the same results, okay? And then we examined them again at the end of the 3rd year in college. The Americans catch up. Not quite at par, maybe half a standard deviation below. I mean, you can imagine by the time they graduate from college, they're at par. So the Chinese make no progress in college. They're just 原地踏步, in critical thinking. But the Americans catch up. So it's very, very interesting data.
Great. Is it available online?
It's written up in the New York Times about 5-6 months ago. We only have 3-4 years of data. I think by the time we finish our 5 years, we're going to do a big announcement.
Okay.
And have
now, if I can turn, thank you very much. If I can turn to Daniel, because Daniel, you're essentially part of the solution, right? That you're meant to, students go on exchange, they learn from this international experience, but also the hosts learn. So it's a kind of a very important sort of 2-way process. I'm wondering if you could talk a bit about that. Learn to live together, right? That's the AFS motto. So what does that mean? And how? And I know you've just been in Hong Kong briefly, but I mean your sense of how we can sort of apply this in Hong Kong and how it's happening in Hong Kong already.
Right, and learn to live together is an incredibly powerful motto, I think. And to your good point, Eric, global mindsets at AFS, we talk mostly about intercultural mindsets, right? And you don't just magically gain an intercultural mindset. You actually have to learn it, you have to experience it, you have to have structured interventions and trained support to help you actually gain and understand the intercultural experiences that you have. And so for us in all our programs, and we exchange almost 15,000 students every year, it's intercultural learning not just for the individual who goes, but it's for the families who receive the individual. It's for the volunteers who help support the network. So it's really more than just the one individual whose lives AFS has an impact, but it really is the entire community. And I think that is what is incredibly important nowadays, and especially as there's more and more student mobility. You talked about 500,000 Chinese students studying abroad. There are almost now 5 million students studying globally, and the predictions are that this will go up to about 8 million globally mobile students, but mostly they just go, and they go for academic purposes. They don't necessarily gain the intercultural experience, and so that's what we're trying to add.
Can you talk a little bit about when we exchanged these through email, you talked about how the private sector needs to be stronger in being an advocate for global skills. What do you mean by that? And do you think the private sector, I mean, whenever we talk about employment, we talk about the skills mismatch, that educational institutions produce people without the right skills and the skills that employers actually demand. So how do you see this particular problem?
Yeah. Well, globalization has completely changed the way the world works, and we know that employers are looking for individuals who have the global skills. And we know that about 1 in 5 jobs relate now to international trade, right? And so many young people experience through their international experience, not just language acquisition, intercultural learning, but also other skills like flexibility, critical thinking, adaptability, and so on. We also know that about 65% of employers say those global skills are necessary. What we do see also is a pretty distinct difference between CEOs and hiring managers. So CEOs say global skills are important, you must have this to be a leader. Hiring managers are looking to fill the technical jobs. And so this is why we need employers to be much more vocal advocates for global skills. So global skills aren't just a soft skill, but they're a hard technical skill that you need.
Now, very quickly, you did a Gen Z study. I'm wondering very quickly if you could sort of summarize some conclusions from that.
Yeah, this was a fascinating report. So we last year polled about 5,000 13 to 18-year-olds in about 30 countries. And we asked them about their attitudes and perceptions to international education. And so our assumption was that most of the Gen Z kids essentially want to have an international experience for academic achievement and academic purposes. The result was quite the opposite. About 66% actually want to have an international experience for cultural exploration. So it is that they're actually looking for authentic experiences, intercultural engagement. So I actually have hope for the current generation because they're, I think, the first generation that wants to add global, not just to their resume, but to their identity.
Thank you. Now, I'm going to go out to the audience very shortly, but I just wanted to ask our panelists whether you have any further comments to make in reaction to what we've been discussing. Kuby?
I would like to thank AFS, Daniel and all the staff here, because my students really benefit from the exchange programs, especially the one-year sending program. I come from a local subsidized secondary school, and we can't bring in students of different nationalities because we are subsidized. We have to observe the regulations, government regulations. But every year we have two students from overseas, mainly from Europe, coming to study in my school for a year. Their presence in my school is really something. My local students, they would like to know more about their countries of origin, and also through AFS. Every year I have one or two, or in the old examination system, I have more. I remember maximum 9 students in a year going for the one-year sending program. They learn a lot. And so AFS, for principals here, any principals here, I think if you are here, I think you must be a fans of AFS. For me, I'm a fan of AFS, not just a director.
We're all friends of AFS, I think, tonight, right? We're all friends of AFS. Any other comments? Now, there's a student here, Isis. Isis, where is Isis? Isis, oh, you're an AFS veteran, so I just thought maybe quick comment from someone What was the value of your AFS experience?
I would say the value of AFS experience is to actually step out of what in your box, because like as a really like local student in a local school, you will not step out of the box. And when you actually interact with not only people from one country, but as an exchange student, you will meet other exchange students which actually know about not only what happened in their country or like their culture, their history. For example, imagine you're reading a piece of news about maybe like more like a politic, what happened in America, and then you actually have an American next to you talking about what they feel about the issue or what the people think about, and their like environment is really open your mind, not only how you see this, but how others actually see this as well.
And you went to Russia, right? You went to Russia, and you're from here in Hong Kong, right? Great, thank you very much. Is there a question here? Is there any question? Sorry, a question.
Thank you. Nick Gordon from the Global Institute for Tomorrow. So we've talked about, you've mentioned needing to, build a global mindset, expanding people's worldview, saying it's not what you learn, it's the process through which you learn it. And if I may be blunt, this sounds like a liberal arts education. Now, Hong Kong education, both colleges and secondary schools, had a push towards a liberal arts education. I haven't followed up on how that went, but is that the road for Hong Kong education? Should Hong Kong continue down this road of liberal arts, or is there another solution that has to come in place?
Great question. Anybody up there would?
I'll go first. I myself didn't go through liberal arts education. I went through the UK university system. Yet I think most of my global upbringing took place before university. So I'm not sure whether liberal arts education is a prerequisite. Like I say, I think it's the your secondary education phase and perhaps your primary education phase, I think is the most important. Getting that curious mindset, getting the English right, that for me is more important than, say, tertiary education. So I know AFS operates, I guess, mostly in the secondary sphere, but still.
Kuby.
You talk about secondary education, but I myself really got a dilemma. Is that there are really too many expectations on our teenagers. When I say teenagers, just from 12 to 18 in high schools, in secondary schools. In the Form 1 or Form 2, that means when students are 12 to 13 years old, they're still rebellious, and they have to go through the transition from primary to secondary. And then they have to face the public examination once they got promoted to Form 4. The curriculum in Hong Kong is really demanding all those academics. Of course, we would like them to have generic skills, including critical thinking, creativity, problem-solving skill, and communication skill. For students in Hong Kong, they have to master at least 2 languages well, not just average standard. They have to master Chinese language, English language, and English is important. And we also talk about global mindset. Wow, so many to handle. And I myself got the dilemma. Is the learning environment here in local secondary school, I'm not talking about the international school here, is it really too competitive and too stressful? I think this is the reality. I know this is the reality. But anyway, I think all of us here, we have to work together to create the space and more room for our students really to enjoy learning. I think enjoy learning is really important. to develop all those generic skills and cultivate global mindset? Wow, so many things. You know, not just students are stressful. We teachers and principals, we can face the stress too.
Okay, what I'm going to do is collect a few questions. So,
first of all, thank you very much for a very interesting and informative evening. My name is Andrew Leung. I'm a China strategist, and I spent the past 38 years in Hong Kong, and I personally handed over to Carrie Lam twice in a row. First of all, as Director General of Social Welfare, and then in London. So my question to you is that the Hong Kong's youth is a very, very serious problem we are facing now, because they are the backbone of the Occupy Central movement, and then they are not really uninterested in the world. They would like to travel to America, to Europe. But the funny thing is that they are not interested in China. I mean, compare with what Eric was saying, the Chinese students, they're interested in the world. They're interested in Hong Kong. They're interested in the United States. But that's not the case in Hong Kong. So the youth issue is a very, very important. And we are fortunate to have someone like Dr. Lau as chairing the Youth Commission. So my question to you is that in Carrie Lam's administration, if she creates a secretary for youth, would you take up the challenge?
I'm going to collect a few questions. So over here.
My name is Mitzi Leung. I'm from UNESCO Hong Kong Association. Actually, it's very interesting talk, and thank you for inviting me to be here. I think developing global mindset is a target, is a goal, but what is the process? I'm interested to hear what Daniel said about intercultural experience. And also, Eric, you were talking about curiosity, right? I think there's something UNESCO, because I spent a fair bit of time understanding what it is. I think at the end of the day, we have to help our young people to be cultural competent. For those of you who go, you can Google, okay, tonight. Look for the book published by UNESCO in 2013 called the Intercultural Competency Framework. Then you will see a lot of things. We like to, well, it is a study by some experts, okay? You can probably take us a little bit closer. What are the things we like our young people to have? I think that is probably a step forward. And on the point that raised by Kuby on the liberal study, well, maybe a little bit about my background. I spent more than 32 years in vocational education and spent, after my retirement, another 8 years helping UNESCO association to be established in Hong Kong, okay? And the way I see liberal study is an opportunity to provide an environment for the young people to choose their interested topics and do something. The scope of the liberal study curriculum is very, very wide, which is very good. Because nowadays, there's so much thing that we need to learn. It's just not possible to learn everything. So give them the opportunity to make a choice. If they're motivated, they would have the curiosity.
Great. Thank you very much. We'll go back here.
Okay. Anthony Tong, Chairman of the Board of the Li Po Chun United World College, former board member of AFS, and former member of the English-speaking union. By telling you that, I'm just telling Dr. Lau that I'm a convert, right? I think around this room, there are certain big questions, but I want to pose one question only, which is the following. The new ABC of the world now, of course, is A for artificial intelligence, B for big data, and C for cloud computing. Yes, you just reminded me. All right. So how does that impact on this wish to globalize? I think on the one hand, we're seeing people getting access and understanding more about the other parts of the world and getting a bit afraid sometimes, getting more myopic. So how does that impinge on this general drift towards global mindsets, wanting our young people to be more inclusive and so on and so forth? Thank you.
Thank you very much. So there are 3 questions there for our panel. One about the process, what's the process? One specifically to Ming, why, or would you take this position? And the other thing is, well, aren't we getting, how do we get myopic students or young people to improve themselves and get this global mindset? So any of you that wish to contribute?
The quick answer is no. I'll tell you why. Under the current government's structure, the way it works, a secretary for youth would essentially be a minister without portfolio, because all the important youth issues belong in the Education Bureau and the Housing Bureau, and so on and so forth. So I specifically advised Carrie, don't create another youth bureau. What you need, and she has taken that on board in her manifesto, what you need is to fire me, first of all. You have to fire me and have the Commission on Youth be chaired by the Chief Secretary, because most youth issues are cross-bureau, cross-departmental issues, and those who understand the way government works in Hong Kong, cross-departmental coordination is tough, and having the CS chair it works much better than having me as Secretary for Youth. Thank you very much.
Anyone want to talk about the process issue or how to deal with myopia among students?
I think
me or whoever. Meanwhile, you got the mic, so don't drop it. Don't drop it.
No, I mean, what you mentioned there were all job-killing technologies. Artificial intelligence, big data, and what was the third? Cloud. Those are all job-stealing or job-killing technologies. That's the way I see it. I don't see it as globalization. I see it as job-killing technologies. And in a lot of young people, in fact, not just young people, I think society generally, workers generally, professionals generally, aren't fully aware of the threats that these technologies will bring in the next 10 to 20 years. They've heard something about artificial intelligence. They've heard something about big data. It's in the paper every day, but they don't realize that their jobs are going to be abolished within their professional career. So I think raising the awareness, especially the threat part, but more importantly, you don't want to turn to guns or religion, as Obama said with blue-collar workers whose jobs were destroyed. How do you turn these A, Bs, and Cs into something to your advantage? I think that's something we need to do. But the first thing to do is raise awareness and put them on notice. I'll put the mic down now.
Yeah, here we go. Kuby, maybe you can take the process question. What is actually the process of doing this? I mean, you're right on the front line.
Yeah. Firstly, I think I just don't understand how come so many people they are holding negative views towards the Hong Kong DSE, the new curriculum. For me, I embrace the new curriculum. I like one of the core subjects, especially liberal study. I have the head of liberal studies department of my school here too. Maybe you can say something later, okay, after me. Henry Choi. And I like liberal study. Why? Because I think in the past, in the old system, those science stream students, they're taking physics, chemistry, and biology, or A maths. They are just too academic oriented. The most thing they care about is a place in the university. And so I don't like this kind of system. For liberal studies, topics like globalization, the public health, technology, and cultural differences, it opens up the mind of the teenagers in Hong Kong. And at the same time, I think those academically less strong, I'm not saying that you're weak. I have two alumni here. They are returnees, AFS returnees. They are not that strong in academics, but they are willing to accept challenges. They are willing to handle difficulties. And so they are bright students. They come from the new system. And so anything from you, Henry? Do you want to say anything?
Very quickly, very quickly. You want to say something? Very quickly, very quickly.
Thank you, Ms. Chen. Yeah, okay. Yep. So I'm actually the panel chairperson of the Liberal Studies Department in Munsang College. Well, actually, this subject is a new one. At least it's new as a core subject for all the secondary students. Actually, this becomes a controversy in the society that there's kind of opinion saying that this actually facilitate the localism in the society, encouraging our teenagers to go on street and protest, some kind like that. But I think the core value and spirit of this subject is actually facilitating the critical thinking of our students. Critical thinking, as mentioned by the panelists, is not about criticizing something or everything. It is about nurturing their own ability to analyze different kinds of information and comprehensively and make their own judgment. That is the spirit of the subject. And I think actually many of our liberal studies teachers are working hard towards this direction. And this subject is actually worth to preserve. And I am really glad that, well, actually Regina has no chance to run for the election because...
All right. She's not here. All right. I'm going to collect a few more questions over on this side. Right. Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much for panelists. Very wonderful discussion. My name is William. I'm coming from a New Work Group and also represent a local charity organization called Time Auction. My question actually addressed the allocation of resources. So how would you address the problem of the educational kind of disparity where in like Beijing, Shanghai, or Hong Kong, you can access to international schools, you can have very good fluent English, then you can have a better job in investment banks and consulting firms where in those local schools and schools in new territories or in second-tier cities, they don't have that, educational resources. Thank you.
Okay, I'm mindful that we're technically at the time, but we're going to go maybe 5 minutes over because we started late. So I'm going to go collect more questions and then we'll go one last time to the panel.
It's me again, as Isis. I wanted to ask a question on if as an exchange student, culture is exchange is not only about how you receive, it's also about how you can give to others. So as an educator in Hong Kong, what do you think, how can you strike a balance between training student global mindset at the same time, understanding about their own identity or their sense of belonging of China or Hong Kong, culture and history, art in general?
Indeed. Well, one corollary to that I would just add is when you develop someone's global mindset, how do you actually keep them here? In other words, you could open the doors and they'll go away. So, they'll make the world their oyster. So is it important, what can we do to ensure that they continue to stay in Hong Kong and contribute to Hong Kong with that global mindset? So there are two questions here, comments or questions.
Okay, so I'm Victor. I'm another student in Hong Kong, and I came from a pretty traditional school, and I moved into international school. And my point is that I think I could confidently say that I developed a sort of a global mindset. But in reference to Hong Kong's future, again, I like to follow up on the point of China and the idea that all of my friends, the moment we talk about sort of where we're heading to, we look towards the West, we look towards the US, we look towards the UK. And a lot of times when we sort of develop this global mindset or we're on the path of developing this global mindset, we forget about, for example, China or Hong Kong. There's a lack of willingness in us to even understand, for example, China's political systems or in terms of their chief executive election and how the election is being run and the relationship it has with China. And so should there be a shift in what we define into how we define global mindset? As in, do we put China as a priority, or should China be included within it in terms of global mindset, in terms of Hong Kong's future? Yeah.
Great, thank you. Eric, I'm wondering if you could talk a bit about that, because with your China expertise.
Well, so many things have been talked about,
yeah.
But first on the liberal education, I think quickly, I think if we want our children to survive in this world where secular trends are happening very, very quickly, education should not be about skills. because whatever skills they learn are going to be obsolete by the time they apply for the job. So I think we need to teach them ways of thinking, problem-solving abilities, and that's what critical thinking is. And one guess that we don't have anything. We can't explain these results that I talked about, the study, but I have a guess because I have kids in the school. It's mathematics. Mathematics is a great trainer of the brain. The mathematics is central to critical thinking. I think that's because it's how you think. It's just a wild guess. Okay, so I think math is important. Don't give up math. I think you raised the most interesting question, which is I talked about. I think to be a globalist, you have to know who you are first. Who are we? Without who you are, you have nothing to offer to the globe. So you can't be a really meaningful globalist. And who are we is not an individual concept, but a cultural concept. Just like you said, intercultural. You're about intercultural. So the culture has to exist in order to enter it. So there can be no nation without, there can be no international without nation. There can be no interculture without culture. So I guess the question for Hong Kong is, the question for China is, mainland China is easy because mainland China has an enormous cultural story, a narrative where mainland Chinese have lived through for several generations now, and they have an identity that is clear and relevant and interesting to the world. Okay, and what is Hong Kong? Who is a Hong Kong person? Who are you? What is your culture? What is your cultural context? And without context, the individual is blank.
Are we talking about values or any core values? I mean,
no,
that's used very often.
No, I don't think, well, value is certainly part of it, but it's too abstract. It's about a common experience that you link yourself to a larger narrative. That's good. That's not good or bad. It just is. So, and the deeper it is, that of course, that I think the more meaningful it is. So what is Hong Kong? When you ask what is a Hong Kong person, it's a very difficult question to answer.
Other panelists that want to say something in response to any of the questions or make additional comments? Daniel?
Well, I would just say something that struck me from a number of you, it's the notion of opportunity and inclusion, and that we have to really make sure that global mindsets is not about the elites, and global mindsets are for students in vocational education, for anybody. It doesn't matter if you're going to be a management consultant or a mechanic, you will need to have some sort of global mindset and skill. But for that, and I'm glad to have heard from you that the government is looking to invest more funding in scholarships for educational exchange. That's what we need. We need more, because otherwise students who can't afford it can't participate in those experiential programs.
Other thoughts, Kuby?
I think the government has been sponsoring a lot of trips to China as well. For many students, if they are not they are not coming from good families or financially rich family, they got a lot of sponsorship. They can go to different parts of China and experience the culture of China. And I think the government has been doing a good job. And for my school, we have been organizing different kinds of study tours. And in Easter, we are having a study tour to the Silk Road. In response to the Mainland Belt and Road Initiative of the government. And so I agree that we need our identity. I encourage students to go for study trips to China as well.
Ming, you have the last word.
Thank you. Thank you. I'll say, I also want to make a few remarks, random remarks. The first one on China. We at the Commission, you've funded over 400 exchanges and internships in China last summer. So we're one of the biggest funding agencies in this. The way we see it, or I see it, is this. A few years ago, there was that China craze. where everyone had to set up a branch in China, everyone had to go to China, everyone had to, that has subdued a little bit with the economic slowdown, I think. But back then I was already saying China's not for everyone. China's not for everyone, and you got to figure out whether it's right for you and useful for you, for your academic career, for your professional career, for your social life. The purpose of our funded trips, exchanges and internships, is simply exposure. Expose yourself to it and then make up your own mind. That's the way I see it. For local Hong Kong kids, here's how I would frame it. The world should be your platform. It so happens that this country to the north grants you the right to work there. You happen to speak a common language. You happen to know the culture. If you choose to go up there, good for you. If you don't, that's your choice, I think. But the worst thing you can end up with is focusing solely on Hong Kong, thinking that you can just exist in Hong Kong without interaction with the outside world, whether it's up north or elsewhere. Second, just two more very quick points. Second one is the role of parents. We've barely touched upon the role of parents. The role of parents in instilling various values and attributes, I think, is obvious, but equally not well discussed. A lot of the challenges or issues young people I speak to face have a parent element. And often it's in the form of parents want this, parents want this, parents want that, when that's not what the student or the young person wants. But I won't go into too much of that today. Last thing I want to say, I think Theresa May, when she first became Prime Minister, she gave a speech that put all of us in this room on notice. I think she talked about the tax-avoiding, global, rootless capitalist. That I agree with all the insular protectionism and tax-avoiding measures. That breed is under threat. Not under threat of extinction, but at least they will not be operating in an environment as accommodative as before. I don't think they'll doubt. And there's a lot of good stuff out of that breed. There's a lot of good attributes, good skills out of being that breed. But I agree, you cannot be rootless. Equally, what does it mean to be a Hong Konger? What does it mean to be Chinese? I think that's a big topic in itself, because take Hong Kong, it's a very diversified community. Expats consider themselves Hong Kongese. My kids who go to an international school, they hardly speak, and they can hardly speak any Cantonese. But all their classmates are like that. And then, are they all rootless, non-Hong Kong people, or are they just one of many communities in Hong Kong? That's just a question to throw out there, and I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm mindful that we're over time, and I'm standing in between your dinner, but I just want to make 3 points. One is that Hong Kong clearly is confronted by a major challenge, and everybody, I think we well accept this idea of a global mindset, that we need it. But Hong Kong, in some ways, I always think that we tend to be obsessed with politics, obsessed with the relationship with the mainland, obsessed with this idea of our domination of our economy by financial services and the property market and all of those sorts of things. But we don't focus enough on how we are raising our children, and that we need to think about how to make this society a community of grace, of civic-mindedness, and civic mindfulness, right? In my globalization class, the second point is, in my globalization classes, when I tried to tell my students about what globalization should mean, not what it does mean, but what should mean, I referred to Jack Nicholson in As Good as It Gets, a wonderful movie. You might remember that Jack Nicholson is an OCD sufferer, and he's trying to romance the lovely, stunning Helen Hunt. But Helen Hunt has spurned him And then they have their first date. And Helen Hunt says to him, well, Melvin, that's the character that Jack Nicholson playing, said, well, give me a compliment. And Jack Nicholson, Melvin says, well, you know, I need to take medicine. But when you spurned me, I went home and I took my medicine. And Helen said, well, what does that mean? That doesn't sound like a compliment. So, well, I want to become a better man. I want to be a better man. And he took his medicine to be a better man. He wanted to romance the lovely Helen Hunt. And that's the way globalization should work. We shouldn't be intimidated by it, but we should think, well, if we want to succeed in this globalized world, have better relations with China or succeed in the global space, then we have to think, well, how can Hong Kong people, how can Hong Kong society, what medicine do we need to take to be a better society, to be a better community? And finally, I really like very much what Eric talked about. What does Hong Kong have to offer? Because, miraculously, this was the theme of exactly what I was going to end up with. That I don't know how many of you remember or know the poem by Cavafy, Ithaca, right? And in this, it's really talks about basically Odysseus, the most global of our old heroes, right? Our ancient heroes, who's wandering around, but basically he's trying to head home, right? And so Cavafy talks about this journey, but it's a journey home, right? And I'm just going to end by reading very quickly the last little bit from this poem, right? Okay. Keep Ithaca. Now remember, Ithaca is Odysseus' home. So he's trying to go home, back to Hong Kong. So put Hong Kong in the place of Ithaca. Right? Keep Ithaca always in your mind. Arriving there is what you are destined for. But do not hurry the journey at all. Better if it lasts for years. So you are old by the time you reach the island, wealthy with all you have gained on the way, not expecting Ithaca to make you rich. Ithaca gave you the marvelous journey. Without her, you would not have set out. But she has nothing left to give you now, and if you find her poor, Ithaca won't have fooled you. Wise as you will have become, so full of experience, you will have understood by then what these Ithacas mean. In other words, what is Hong Kong? We should probably, to go global, we need to come home. We need to understand what we stand for. We need to understand what our values are. We need to understand what our community should be. How do we improve it, right? And that, I think, is the way that we globalize our mindsets, but we also try to keep people rooted at home, create some value, create a community of grace, create a place where people, young people especially, want to live. So thank you very much. I'm sorry I went over time, and have a good dinner.